How is it that some people are heard in gatherings where attention is fought over by others? We've watched it happen. Voices overlap, jokes get sharper, opinions get louder. Everyone is trying to be seen. And then one person speaks once, calmly, and the room shifts. Nobody votes them in. Nobody announces them as leader. Yet people pause, listen, and adjust. So what is that force? Is it confidence, status, experience, fear, charm? Or is it something more precise, something invisible that governs the room before a single word is even said? Is it a manipulated situation? Or do some people have it naturally? And this doesn't just happen in social gatherings. It happens in office meetings, in friend circles, etc. Their influence over the table is almost unfair, until we remind ourselves that the world doesn't play favorites. It simply rewards the prepared. Machiavelli understood the world perfectly. A wise prince should establish himself on that which is in his own control, and not in that of others. You see, when you build upon the people, you build upon mud. The one that speaks and gains attention is not concerned about your opinion of him. His foundation is built upon himself. This is invisible dominance. This is a sphere of influence unknown to most people who glide through life unaware, never asking the questions that matters. How do you dominate perception without speaking? How do you wear the aura of confidence in a manner that your presence is seen even before words are uttered and actions are shown? The answer will surprise you. It is not chasing attention or even wanting it. The element that betrays us is neediness. It is caring what people think. It is paying more attention to others than we do to ourselves. You see, the power behind dominance is the lack of need or want. When we come from a place of need, we scream desperation. When we come from a place of want, we scream scarcity. Yet demonstrate a lack of both, and your opinion will be sought after. This format of influence is real, because the more we compete, the more we leak. Emotion, urgency, approval seeking, and the need to be understood. Meanwhile, the person with invisible dominance doesn't fight for attention. They control access to themselves. They don't win arguments. They set terms. They don't destroy rivals. They govern behavior with silence, timing, and consequence. So the real issue isn't whether people respect us in a moment. It's whether the environment has learned that our presence has weight. And the moment we see that, another question appears immediately. If the room can be trained to respond to gravity, why are we still trying to win by volume? Why are we adding more content to our behavior rather than subtracting? We are discussing a kind of dominance that never raises its voice. We've all seen it. The room is noisy, opinions collide, someone is trying to win, and yet the real power sits quietly like gravity. No performance, no desperation, no need to convince. And the strange part is this: everyone else adjusts without being told. So what are we actually witnessing? Confidence, status, money, or something more mechanical, something built from incentives, timing, and consequence? If dominance is real, why do the loudest men often lose outcomes even when they win arguments? Why do the ones who explain themselves the most end up least respected? And why do the calm ones, sometimes the ones who barely speak, end up setting the terms? If that's true, then what are terms made of? And who gave anyone permission to set them? Because if we can't answer that, then we're playing a game we don't understand. And in games like that, we don't lose loudly. We leak quietly. The bottom line is this: the less you speak, the more you are heard. The less you push, the more you pull them in. We react in defiance. The less you make them react, the more you are obeyed. Make them believe you allow them to choose for themselves, and they submit to you without protest. Invisible dominance is governance. Not domination, not intimidation, not ego war. Governance. And the first threat to governance is the belief that power is a feeling. Power isn't a mood, it's a position. It's the ability to shape behavior without begging for compliance. That raises an uncomfortable question. If power is positional, why do we keep trying to feel powerful instead of becoming hard to move? When someone disrespects us, why does the body rush to react? When someone challenges us publicly, why does the mind want to prove? When someone withdraws, why does the nervous system itch to chase? What is being pulled from us? Emotion, attention, time, validation, compliance. And if someone can reliably pull those things, what are we becoming in their hands? A man with choice, or a man with buttons? Because the moment we have buttons, someone will press them, not always out of hatred, often out of curiosity, habit, or hunger. And this is the dilemma. We forget we are all the same. We have to obey the same physical laws as everyone else. So the same weakness we exploit in others can be exploited in us as well. And this is why you must train yourself to see these weaknesses in yourself as well. If the illusion of choice is a tool you can use to govern, to shape perception, then the same illusion is being used on you as well. Thus you must always ask, who benefits from your choices? Machiavelli wrote about princes, but the rules he describes show up everywhere. Workplaces, friendships, families, relationships, social circles. He wasn't describing romance. He was describing human nature under pressure. He points out that people are often loyal while it's convenient and vanish when the cost rises. That's not a reason to become bitter. It's a reason to become structured. If loyalty can be conditional, what holds behavior steady? Is it love? Sometimes. Is it admiration? Sometimes. But what's dependable when emotions shift? Consequence, reputation, incentives. This is where his famous line lands. It's safer to be feared than loved if we can't be both. But what is fear in modern life? Not violence, not threats. Fear is the expectation of loss of access, loss of opportunity, loss of status, loss of comfort, loss of the relationship. So the real question becomes, how do we create ethical fear, the kind that makes people careful without becoming cruel? And if we can do that, why would we ever need direct conflict again? Governance starts where most men quietly fail. We leak. We leak emotion through facial expressions. We leak information through over-explaining. We leak attention through instant replies. We leak predictability through routine reactions. Every leak becomes a handle, and every handle becomes leverage. So what happens when someone learns that provocation gets a reaction? They provoke again. What happens when guilt gets compliance? They guilt again. What happens when flattery gets access? They flatter again. This is not always malicious. It's conditioning. The environment learns what works. So the first law is brutal and simple. We stop rewarding behavior that attempts to control us. That leads to another question. If we stop rewarding it, what replaces it? Silence, delay, boundaries, consequence. And how do we avoid looking weak while we do it? Because silence can look like fear when it has no weight, and delay can look like avoidance when it has no standard behind it. So weight matters. How do we build weight? Silence is not emptiness. It's pressure. In social dynamics, silence does something most people can't tolerate. It creates uncertainty. And uncertainty makes people reveal themselves. When we don't rush to answer, the other person keeps talking. They justify, they probe, they accidentally show motive. That's why interrogators use silence, and negotiators let the other side speak first. So if silence is powerful, why do we fear it? Because silence feels like a loss of control when we're addicted to being understood. But what if the addiction to being understood is the leash? What if chasing clarity is what makes us predictable? If someone can trigger us into explaining, they can trigger us into negotiating. And if we negotiate our standards, do we still have standards? Or do we have moods? The next question is obvious. How do we use silence without becoming irrelevant, cold, or detached from the room? This is where reputation enters. Reputation is the shadow that arrives before we do. It's what people believe happens if they cross a line. It's what they believe we tolerate. It's what they believe we reward. If our reputation is, "He forgives anything," then anything will be attempted. If our reputation is, "He explodes," then people bait us for entertainment. If our reputation is, "He notices patterns and consequences arrive quietly," people test less. So how is reputation built? Not through speeches, not through explaining boundaries. Reputation is built through consistency. One clean boundary, enforced calmly, repeated enough times that the environment learns. Access changes when standards are violated. Machiavelli even argues that certain severities, used decisively, can prevent ongoing disorder. In modern life, that translates to this: one calm consequence now can save years of disrespect later. But what consequence is clean, and what consequence is emotional? How do we avoid punishing and instead enforce logically? The answer is access. Access is currency. Access to our time, attention, energy, information, network, intimacy, opportunities. Most control games are access games wearing emotional masks. Provocation is often a demand for attention. Guilt is often a demand for time. Flattery is often a demand for closeness. Urgency is often a demand for obedience. So the question becomes, what is the price of access in our life? If access is cheap, we are treated cheaply. If access is expensive, behavior improves to afford it. That's not arrogance, it's supply and demand. A thing that is always available is not valued. So how do we raise the price ethically? Through scarcity, controlled availability tied to respect. But then another question appears. What happens when someone reacts badly to scarcity? When boundaries are set, manipulators escalate, and even decent people sometimes test. So what stops escalation without a fight? Frame control. Frames decide who explains themselves. If someone frames us as overreacting, we start defending. If someone frames us as needy, we start proving. If someone frames us as junior, we start overworking. Invisible dominance is refusing bad frames without arguing inside them. For example, relax, it was just a joke. The frame offered is that our boundary is irrational. If we debate the joke, we accept the frame. Governance ignores the bait and addresses the standard. Calmly, briefly. Noted, or that doesn't land. Then we move forward. No lecture, no anger. Why does that work? Because it denies reward and keeps posture. But the next question is critical. How do we keep warmth while doing this? Because a man who becomes robotic loses social glue, and social glue is leverage too. How do we become respected without becoming isolated? Machiavelli's lion and fox gives the balance. The lion intimidates wolves, but can't detect traps. The fox detects traps, but can't intimidate wolves. Power is switching. In modern terms, fox first. Observe, map motive, read pattern. Lion only when necessary. Decisive boundary, clean consequence. Then back to fox. Most men do the opposite. They lead with lion, emotion, force, confrontation. Become predictable, and then traps work. So what does fox actually look like day to day? It looks like patience. It looks like not reacting on the first impulse. It looks like letting someone reveal themselves. It looks like noticing who only appears when something is needed. It looks like noticing how people behave when they think no one is watching. This raises the next question. How do we turn observation into a practical system we can run without overthinking? Here's the system. Governance in 7 moves. First, identify the extraction. In every tense interaction, something is being pulled. Reaction, time, validation, compliance, information. Second, remove the free reward. If provocation wants reaction, we give none. If guilt wants compliance, we give calm delay. If flattery wants instant access, we slow it down. Third, respond from our frame, not theirs. We state standards, not emotions. Fourth, attach a consequence that fits the situation. Not revenge, not punishment for ego. A logical change in access. Less time, less collaboration, less intimacy, less information. Fifth, reward alignment when behavior improves. Warmth returns, access returns, trust grows. Sixth, build allies quietly. Power is rarely solo. Seventh, keep a clean exit available, because the ability to leave is the ultimate consequence. Now the question that matters. Which step breaks most men? It's step 4 and step 7, consequence and exit, because they require sacrifice. If we can't risk losing people, can we ever truly govern? Let's talk about the addiction that ruins governance. Trying to be understood. The urge to correct the narrative. The urge to explain what we really meant. The urge to prove we're not the villain. But the more we chase understanding, the more we signal dependency on approval. And dependency kills dominance because it turns access into a donation instead of a transaction. So what replaces the need to be understood? Consistency, competence, reputation. When we consistently deliver value, we become hard to replace. When we consistently enforce standards, we become hard to test. This is own arms versus borrowed power. Machiavelli warns against relying on mercenaries, forces that aren't truly ours. Modern mercenaries are approval, validation, being liked, being the good guy. If those supports disappear, what remains? Skills, discipline, network, options. If options are weak, boundaries become bluffs, and bluffs eventually get called. So the next question becomes, how do we build options fast enough to make boundaries real? Competence is the first option. It creates demand. Demand gives leverage. Leverage lets us enforce without drama. This is why a man with rare skills can be calm. He doesn't need to beg. He can say less. He can choose more. But competence alone isn't dominance if access is uncontrolled, because people will still extract. So competence must be paired with selectivity. Selectivity makes time expensive. Selectivity makes attention meaningful. Selectivity forces people to behave if they want entry. And then silence makes the whole structure sharper, because silence creates mystery, and mystery creates caution. Skill makes us valuable. Selectivity controls supply. Silence protects frame. Together they create gravity. So a new question appears. If gravity is the goal, why do we keep chasing respect directly instead of building the ingredients that produce it? Scenario 1. The public challenge. In a meeting or group setting, someone throws a comment designed to test hierarchy. It's rarely about content. It's about position. If we react emotionally, we lose. If we freeze fearfully, we lose. The fox response is to deny reward and keep posture. We don't speed up. We don't justify. We don't get pulled into the side quest. We continue with the task, steady and calm. Later, privately, we apply lion if needed. One sentence, clean standard. Let's keep it respectful. Or, that's not how we speak here. Then back to normal. Why private? Because public correction triggers ego wars. Private governance protects the environment and reduces the need for enemies. But here's the next question. What if the person persists? Then consequence becomes real. Less collaboration, less access, fewer opportunities. The room learns not from our words, but from what changes. Scenario 2. The guilt extractor. This person doesn't ask directly. They imply. They sigh. They say, must be nice. Or, we're not important then. The extraction is compliance through emotional tax. The mistake is arguing with guilt, because arguing accepts the frame that guilt is a valid currency. Governance responds with calm refusal and consistency. We'll do what we can. Then we keep the plan. If guilt escalates, access shrinks. Not out of cruelty, but out of hygiene. Because guilt is a control technology. If guilt works, it repeats. The question is, why does guilt work on good men? Because good men mistake emotion for obligation. But obligation without agreement is control. Once we see that, guilt loses its magic. Then another question appears. What replaces guilt-based relationships? Relationships built on mutual respect, clear requests, and honest limits. Anything else is extraction dressed as care. Scenario 3. The status tester. Some people don't hate, they test. They interrupt, challenge small details, poke at certainty. The goal is to see whether we fold or chase approval. Governance handles this with pace and boundary. We slow down instead of speeding up. We finish sentences instead of surrendering them. We don't apologize for taking space. If interruptions continue, we name it once. Let's not talk over each other, then continue. Why only once? Because repeating the boundary turns it into negotiation. The boundary is stated, then behavior decides consequence. But what if the other person is higher in formal hierarchy? Boss, elder, authority? Then we don't fight. We position. We build leverage through competence, alliances, options, and the ability to exit when the time is right. In other words, we don't win today's argument. We build tomorrow's terms. Which raises a strategic question. Are we trying to be right Or are we trying to be unmovable? Many men confuse dominance with aggression, but aggression often signals insecurity because it seeks immediate emotional payoff. Invisible dominance seeks long-term incentive control. That means we sometimes accept a small discomfort now to avoid a much bigger loss later. This is what Machiavelli's cruelty well used translates to in modern life. One decisive boundary early prevents repeated disrespect. But where do we place the boundary so it's clean? We place it on behavior, not on identity. We don't attack the person, we govern the action. That doesn't work. We're not doing that. We'll continue when it's respectful. And then we follow through. The follow-through is everything. Without follow-through, boundaries become suggestions, and suggestions teach people to negotiate. So the next question becomes, how do we follow through without becoming rigid and bitter? By rewarding alignment. Governance isn't permanent punishment, it's training. When behavior improves, warmth returns. This is how dominance becomes leadership instead of tyranny. Leadership is invisible dominance with legitimacy. It's the ability to be firm without being theatrical. It's the ability to be warm without being cheap. It's the ability to be generous without being exploited. So what's the daily discipline that builds this? 3 habits. Fewer words, cleaner standards, stronger options. Fewer words means we stop narrating our internal state to people who will weaponize it. Cleaner standards means we decide what we tolerate before the moment arrives, so we don't improvise under emotion. Stronger options means we invest in skills, health, income, and relationships that expand choice. Why do options matter so much? Because the man who cannot leave is the man who will tolerate. And the man who tolerates will be tested. So the next question becomes, what is the ultimate consequence in modern life? It isn't yelling. It isn't revenge. It's removal. Removing access, removing attention, removing presence. Absence creates reality, and reality changes behavior more than arguments ever could. There's a paradox worth facing. The more we chase dominance, the less we have it. The man who needs to prove dominance signals need. The man with dominance can afford calm because he isn't auditioning. So we stop trying to look powerful and start building systems that make us powerful. We stop buying peace with dignity. We stop paying emotional taxes to stay liked. We stop rushing to close every misunderstanding. Because some misunderstandings are engineered, not accidental. If someone is committed to misunderstanding, explanation becomes fuel. In my experience, the moment we stop explaining ourselves to people committed to misunderstanding, life becomes quieter. Not easier, quieter. And in that quiet, patterns become obvious. Who respects boundaries without drama? Who only behaves when there's reward? Who escalates when told no? That information is priceless. So the next question is, what do we do with the information? We redesign the circle. We build a court like a prince would. Alliances with people who value stability. Distance from people who feed on chaos. Now the most important question. What does govern them actually mean in one sentence? It means we shape behavior by controlling what people can access from us. Emotion, attention, time, opportunity. Through consistent standards and consequences delivered without instability. That's it. But can we see how radical that is? It means we don't need to destroy enemies. We don't need to humiliate rivals. We don't need to win every argument. We simply make disrespect unprofitable. We make alignment rewarding. We make our standards predictable and our reactions unpredictable. Predictable standards, unpredictable emotions, because we don't give emotional access. The environment adapts. People either rise in behavior or lose access. And that leads to the final strategic question. Are we willing to lose who we must lose to keep what matters? Because invisible dominance has a cost. It costs comfort. It costs approval. It costs the old identity of being endlessly available. But what's the alternative? Being governed by other people's moods. So here's the closing reality. We don't need a throne to live like a strategist. The battlefields are meetings, relationships, friendships, family dynamics, business negotiations, and the silent war of reputation. Most threats don't arrive with weapons. They arrive with smiles, jokes, guilt, urgency, and subtle disrespect. Machiavelli's insight wasn't that people are evil. It was that people are predictable under incentives. So we stop wishing for fairness and start building structure. We govern emotion, so emotion doesn't govern us. We govern words, so we stop leaking our mind. We govern access, so our life stops being an open tap. We become fox first, observing, mapping, reading. We become lion only when needed, decisive, clean, brief. And we reward alignment, so dominance becomes leadership, not loneliness. The final question we carry into the week is simple. What changes immediately if we stop trying to win arguments and start setting terms? And if that works, what else becomes possible once we're no longer reacting, once we're governing?
Thank you for listening. Please like and comment to support our channel and subscribe for more videos.